y'all, it's Lauren. Today I'm coming to you with something a little bit different. My husband and I decided to try our hand at risotto. We've tried it once before and it came out great. So today we're going to be doing that with some pork chops, an artichoke, and risotto. So tune in. Let's see how it goes. Again, I'm trying to use as many pantry staples as I can. Now to recreate it, you're going to need pork chops. Any cut is fine. I'm using bone-in. Onions, mushrooms. You will need short grain rice for this. It's a must for the risotto. Chicken broth, green peas, mayo, Worcestershire sauce, butter, and our favorite Uncle Chris's. I'm starting off with the artichokes first because aside from the risotto, it takes the longest to cook and I'm steaming it. So I'm going to chop a majority of the stem off and leave about an inch left. Then I'm going to remove some of the lower leaves because those don't cook well and they stay pretty woody. You can easily rip them off with your hands. You shouldn't need a knife or any sort of kitchen shears for this part. After I'm done removing those leaves, then I'm just going to use my chef's knife to remove the top portion about an inch or so from the top. This part was just as difficult as it looks because the artichoke leaves are actually pretty tough and kind of waxy to cut through, but I made it work without serious injury. It just took a little longer than I expected. Now I'm going to use my kitchen shears to cut the tips off of the rest of the leaves. This step is pretty important because those tips are really sharp. They have like mini thorns on the top and you don't really want to be handling those while you're trying to eat it. For this step, I just hold on to the artichoke and spin it around in my hand so I don't miss any of the pieces. Now I can usually finish a whole artichoke by myself, but for this night I actually shared it with my husband since we were having risotto as well. And to finish it off, I'm just going to start pulling it apart a bit so that the steam can get easier in between the leaves for cooking. And then I'm just going to pop it into the steam basket. I just diced up my onions and my mushrooms. Again, I just chopped up the onion like I did before by cutting off the top and removing the first layer of skin before chopping it. And I do remove the stems from my mushrooms, but that's only because I don't really like them for this dish. But I chop them in a similar way to the onions where I cut them into strips and then chop them the other way. I've melted some butter in a pan and I'm adding in the mushrooms and the onion to cook down. These are going to cook for about a minute or so. Now I'm going to give them a quick season with some salt and some black pepper. Give it a quick stir and then add in a cup of the short grain rice. Again, the short grain rice is a must, and that's because it releases starches that mix in with the chicken broth to make it a creamy sauce for the risotto. So right here I'm just adding in some of that chicken broth to cover the rice, and I'm going to leave it alone to cook and soak in that broth. While that's working, I'm seasoning up these pork chops with the Uncle Chris's. Again, front and back, and I'm just going to set it aside. I'm quickly going to make a dip for the artichokes while I'm waiting for the risotto to reduce down a bit more. Here I'm just using about half a cup of mayo, and I forgot to mention this next ingredient earlier, but I do add lemon pepper to this, not just plain black pepper. Then I stir in some of the Worcestershire sauce, and that's pretty much it. Easy peasy. At this point, the rice has really absorbed all the broth, but it's still not done. So I'm going to add a little bit more of the chicken broth and then repeat this step until I've either used up all the chicken broth or the rice is cooked completely through. The pork chops are probably the easiest part of this meal. I coated a pan with some cooking oil and just added them straight to the pan to sear. Right about this time, the house was starting to smell really good, so my husband decided to come over here and check everything out. I let the rice reduce down one last time and then added the rest of the broth. After a quick stir, then I got out the frozen peas and went ahead and mixed those in. Peas are one of my favorite add-in ingredients, and I'm really lucky because my husband John will tolerate them even though they're not his favorite thing. And luckily, he really does like them in this dish, so I can add a pretty liberal amount. At this point in the meal, we just need to let the peas warm up a bit and then the risotto will be done. The pork chops are done on the first side, so then I'm just going to turn them over and let them sear on the other side. This should only take about 2 minutes to finish. Lastly, the artichoke should finally be done. I'm just going to use my tongs to try to remove one of the leaves. If it comes off with having to wiggle it around too much, then it's done. And there you go. Perfect. To break it down, I used my chef's knife to cut it down the middle. This part was definitely a lot easier to do when it was cooked. Then I use a spoon to remove the choke from the center. The choke is that little fuzzy bit that kind of looks like hair. It's called the choke because from what I understand, the fibers can literally get stuck in your throat and intestines and make you choke. But be careful not to go down too much with your spoon. You don't want to take out too much of the heart, which is honestly the best part of the artichoke. You can actually see a small little line beneath the choke that can guide you for where to stop. I also like to remove just a few pieces of the smaller leaves that are closer to the choke just in case some of the fibers get stuck in them. To plate it, I add a few scoops of the risotto and then place a pork chop on top and add an artichoke to the side, and that meal is now done.
All looks so yummy.
You hungry?
I am hungry. Do I look hungry?
A little bit. How was it? Try the risotto. Well, not from the big
With my
spoon.
size spoon?
Is that your size spoon?
My size spoon.
Did I serve you with the wrong spoon? Oops. You're so fancy.
It's delicious. Good job, baby.
Thank you.
And it's got good texture, and the peas are sweet, and the mushrooms, I love the mushrooms.
I knew you would. You ready to eat?
Yes, let's eat.
All right. Hey guys, that's it. So we actually really liked that dish and the risotto came out perfectly. I don't know if you've ever tried to make risotto, but it's really hit or miss. You can either undercook it or overcook it and you really don't know what you're going to get until you sit down to eat it. So I was really happy that we kind of got that sweet middle ground. It paired perfectly with the artichokes and the pork chops, and so we're probably going to add that to our repertoire. Not every day, it does take a while, so maybe once a month, every other month, something like that. But if you like this video and want to see more, please go feel free to go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, and I will see you guys later.